Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 261, The Productivity Trap. Welcome to season 23 of the Flourishing Introvert Talks, and I want to start this episode by sharing something I've been contemplating recently. Now, it's complicated, so please stay with me here. When did we forget that we are human beings who take jobs or have careers in order to live our lives to the fullest? In our world obsessed by more, faster, louder and cheaper seem to be the current watchwords. I'm here to invite us all to a world where we consume and maybe even do less, calmly achieved through the qualities of slower, softer and priceless. Yep, it's time to go countercultural. So much of what fills our hearts rather than our wallets is priceless, I've found. Like the beauty of a sunset, which I miss if I'm still head down in the office trying to meet unreasonable deadlines. Like missing a young one's first steps because I had to leave home at silly o'clock to be on a train for 68 minutes so I could attend a virtual meeting of global account managers. Like not being able to grab a couple of moments to enjoy the warmth of the long-awaited spring sunshine on my face as I take my morning coffee break because my calendar is filled with back-to-back meetings. Goodness only knows when I'll get to do the work that each meeting initiates. When did we become so fearful of advocating for our needs assertively or using our power and authority appropriately that we allowed our lives to be consumed by this workplace hustle? Personally, I find nothing motivational about the glorification of the hustle. My productivity doesn't increase because you demand more and quicker. My wellbeing isn't improved by a dog-eared and faded poster on the wall declaring our employees are our most valuable asset. Performative measures tell us very little of what matters and is really only useful for those focused solely on the bottom line. And many organisations have found to their cost that it's what gets measured that gets done, so it often creates a culture of blind compliance. Efficiency was never as important or powerful as effectiveness, and I learned that from Peter Drucker back in the late 1980s. He said, efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. And I always add to that, effectiveness is doing the right things right. But the right things or stuff that makes a difference is hard to measure, so regularly gets ignored. I fear that inclusive, respectful and caring work cultures are a thing of the past, as borne out by the latest diktats. Please excuse my rather juvenile sense of humour for a moment, but I am amused that the word diktat as a principle says it all about the perpetrators of such orders, doesn't it? Dicks. Anyway, that being true, it's down to we more rebellious, sassy introverts to see through the BS and apply some sense here. Although I've called this episode The Productivity Trap because far too many of us are caught in the cycle of do more with less and faster, what I think we should be pushing back on is the growing trend towards toxic productivity. In her book of the same title, published in November 2024, Isra Nazir calls on us to reclaim our time and energy in this always-on world of more. So she and I are clearly on the same page here, and I'm inviting you to join us there. If we accept that toxic positivity is about dismissing or invalidating real emotions in an attempt to maintain a positive outlook at all times, toxic productivity is dismissing or invalidating our own needs in order to keep churning out the work, which ultimately compromises our health and well-being. Both are as damaging as each other, and both are simply ludicrous. I feel there is some overlap though, as we're being encouraged to put on a brave, happy face and not complain about the workload, because we all know that damages our chances of promotion or a bonus. The managers, leaders and influencers driving this trend are not only causing damage to those who work for them, they are flouting the laws that are supposed to protect employees. And I include influencers as complicit in driving this trend because many of us who run our own small business are put under this pressure by some of the gurus on social media. In fact, there's a real guilt-inducing paradox here. Some of the influencers say we must be up before 5 a.m. for an hour in the gym before meditating and journaling in order to be on fire for the 9 hours at work, whilst others tell us how to earn millions working just 5 hours a week. It's no wonder we are confused and, frankly, at our wits' end. Here's why too many of us fall for it, though. The narrative in business circles around success links and even validates success and achievement to self-worth. We are compared unfavourably to those who have sold their soul to their work, and being seen and heard is touted as an essential ingredient of business success. All this does is create a workplace culture of noise over nuance, where looking busy is the name of the game. I have met masters of that game who achieve very little, but who always tell you how busy they are. Whatever happened to genuine contribution and impact? Oh, that's right. It's too difficult to measure. We are chided for needing to take a break. Remember the Wall Street line, lunch is for wimps? Well, that has recently been restated proudly by the new UK Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch. Ugh. In some organisations, if you leave the office before 7 p.m, you're clearly not committed, which will attract a lower performance rating. Heck, I've even heard of the competitions around who arrives earliest, leaves latest, and the timings of their emails. Talking of emails, most of the managers I work with pick up and respond to work emails when they're on holiday. When, I wonder, do they truly get to switch off? More worrying of late is how many annual leave approvals are being withdrawn just as someone is due to go away with their family. If that's not toxic, I don't know what is. So, my sassy introverts, how do we pick the lock and navigate our way out of this productivity trap? Here are a few useful tools that I've had to develop out of necessity that you may find useful. And of course, feel free to add your own and share them with us in the Introvert Roundtable group on LinkedIn. The first tool is to remember that, as an introvert, recharging your mental, emotional and social batteries is a power move, because that's what enables you to go further. Any vehicle will shudder to a halt if it doesn't have the right fuel or runs out of fuel. Why do we think people are any different? Hospitals and graveyards are littered with people who thought they were invincible. I found I'm more productive when I plan my recharging time in advance rather than trying to squeeze it in when I have a moment. I know better than to wait until my warning light comes on before I try to find some time to refuel. The stress that comes from looking for my next recharging moment is too great. Plus, my productivity has already taken a hit by then. How often have you had to go back and rework something because it was done during a time of stress? It's happened to me a lot, and that's what encouraged me to develop my brilliant battery boosters. They're a great addition to any Introverts toolkit, and please check the summary for this episode for how to get your free copy. The second tool I'd recommend is the pre-charging technique. I found that I need to look ahead in my calendar and build in relevant time and pre-charging methods before difficult client meetings or before particularly challenging training courses. I will be mentally more alert and on my best form if I anticipate and prepare for what might come my way. If I find a client challenging emotionally and or energetically, I do best when I ensure that my protective shield is strengthened and in place before we start working together. It's the best armour I've come across, and I teach all of those in my Frustrated to Flourishing programme how to develop their own. And probably my most valuable tools have been the range of assertive responses I've developed, which I can use as and when necessary without guilt or shame. They include things like, I need time to process my thoughts on this decision, so I'll get back to you before 4 this afternoon. And if my input is not needed at the meeting, I believe my time would be better spent getting to the root cause of the client problem, so please send me the meeting minutes. And even, I don't have capacity for that today, and I can start it first thing in the morning. How does that work for you? We all have our own version of these, and being known for being assertive as opposed to difficult or obstructive is very necessary. As you will have heard, all of mine offer workable solutions, which I'll tweak according to the situation. Now, if we're serious about creating inclusive working environments where productivity is genuinely high, here are 5 of my golden rules. Number 1, loud and busy are very different from considered and effective. The former smacks of presenteeism, which might appeal to those influenced by the proximity bias. The latter, however, is where the real work is being done and where we are able to discern impact. Given that first one, number 2, establish, model and promote a work culture that celebrates thoughtful contribution and meaningful input over noisy theatrics and look at me posturing. Number 3, recognise the effective workflow that can be achieved through normalising asynchronous communication. This is so important for success in today's business, as we don't all have to be available at the same time and we learn to trust one another more. Number 4, spend time co-creating psychological safety where everyone feels able to talk about what's not working and who needs more support. Putting on a brave face but ultimately letting things fail serves no one. And number 5, recognise that everyone is different and take time to explore that difference. We all have strengths and areas of development, and when we get to play to our strengths more often, we harmonise like a madrigal choir. That is when we are really productive. Now, let me leave you with a couple of things you could do immediately so you begin breaking out of the toxic productivity trap. Leaders, I invite you to see through the bluster and stop giving the squeaky wheel the oil. Notice how much value the quieter members of your team are adding and recognise that. That will serve to redefine what success really means. And individuals, I invite you to step into your quiet power and take your rights seriously. Build in that necessary time to pre-charge and recharge. Oh, and be ready to explain why that will make you more productive. Leaders don't know what they don't know, remember? And they're not mind readers. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.